I am 1/3 of the way through the challenge I set for myself, which I've been documenting here in this video series, the Million Words Project. And 1/3 of the way into the project, I can say, almost without exception, there hasn't been a single week in which I've not faced some unexpected challenge, some change in plans, some new hurdle to overcome. Not a single week has gone how I planned it to go. And this week, well, I'm combining these weeks for a very specific reason. Let's talk about it in this week's episode of The Million Words Project. Welcome to The Million Words Project. I'm author, educator, and creativity coach Eric Sheridan Wyatt. In addition to writing books, ghostwriting biographies, helping writers refine their work and publish it, and working with a wide range of writers, would-be writers, and other creatives, I am the host of this video series in which I detail my self-imposed challenge to write 1 million words in 12 months. In addition to giving updates on my progress toward 1 million words, I also use these videos to share with you the ups and downs of my own creative life. Partly, I share the things I've learned and am continuing to learn about creativity, productivity, and crafting a life of creative flow because it helps reinforce the concepts with myself. But I also hope that from time to time, something I say, share, or stumble upon will encourage, challenge, or inspire you to tackle the big thing creative idea you've always wanted to take on, but haven't ever quite gotten around to. The mantra of the Million Words Project is that small steps lead to big results. So let's talk about the steps I took this week on my journey toward 1 million words. Okay, so in the welcome portion of the video, just seconds ago, I said we would look at this week of my journey using the singular, I think. But if you notice the title of the video, this update is actually for both weeks, 17 and 18. Before I dive into the actual numbers for these 2 weeks, let me explain why I decided to combine these 2 weeks into one update. First, if you were around when I combined weeks 8 and 9 into one video, I mentioned then that the progress I've made in real life is several weeks ahead of where I am in the posting and sharing of these videos. In fact, I've been consistently about 2 months behind in posting videos compared to where I am in real life. As an example, the video I posted last week on December 9th-ish was documenting the events of week 16, which I actually experienced the week of October 9th. So combining weeks is actually one way to try to shorten that gap a little bit. And I'm going to combine weeks again next episode as well for this very reason. The more important reason I am combining week 17 and 18, though, is that I had set the intention of combining the numbers of these 2 weeks prior to the start of week 17. In my planning and scheduling session prior to week 17, I knew that my schedule was going to make it very difficult to accomplish the weekly standard minimum number of words to stay on pace with the million words target. When I realized how little time I would have for writing in week 17, I looked ahead to week 18 and also realized that my calendar was actually already pretty full for that week as well. In fact, I knew instead of 6 days of solid writing and work time, I would only have 3 days in week 17 that could be considered working days, and possibly only 3 days in the following week, week 18. So I decided to plan to treat the 2 weeks together as one. I would go into this 2-week period with an intention of writing 1 week's worth of new words. Now, if you're new to these videos, the weekly minimum target for new words is 20,000, spread out over 50 weeks to equal 1 million words. So let's take a look at what actually happened. Week 17 was indeed a 3-day work week. I had a family commitment away from home on Sunday through Tuesday, and then another planned celebration day on Friday. So I had a few hours Tuesday evening to gather myself and try to accomplish a few things once I got back home, and then all day Wednesday and Thursday. Those were my working days. I also stole a little time on Saturday, which altogether made it about 3 full work days. As I've stated before, the new words written metric that I keep track of for this particular project are only one portion of what I do throughout the week. There are business tasks, household tasks, chores, errands, and all the things of daily life to keep up with. Looking at the raw numbers from week 17, you'll notice that while I was hoping to hit 10,000 words that week, I actually exceeded that number by a fair amount, with a weekly total of 15,839 words. Not too bad, given the circumstances. It was by far the lowest single week I've had since starting the challenge, but considering I was budgeting for a half week, that left me feeling pretty good about the week to follow. Since I had hoped to get 20,000 words out of the 2 weeks combined, I knew even if week 18 was just a terrible week, I'd only need to write about 4,000 new words to get in that target zone, in that low target zone, which was good because as week 17 was coming to a close, week 18 looked even more chaotic than it had when I first came up with this 2-week average plan. I had several day trips on the horizon, and there was also an unexpected video conference meeting, as well as a couple of other day-long errands that were going to have me away from my desk for a majority of the week. By Friday of week 17, the number of days I thought would include sufficient time to write in the upcoming week had dwindled to 2.5. So let's look at the numbers for week 18. The week 18 total was almost 25,000 words. One of the biggest new writing weeks I've had since starting this project. What happened? Well, to put it bluntly, the schedule I had come up with completely collapsed. One after another, things that I anticipated would draw me away from my desk were canceled or postponed, and I ended up having a full week of time to write. And write I did. 24,867 words, which was only 20 words short of my second highest word count so far. That left me with a combined 2-week total of 40,706 words, or just over the typical minimum target goal of 20,000 words per week on average. I had snatched a major victory from the jaws of defeat. The introverted part of me, which is the predominant part of me, would love nothing more than to have a set, job-like schedule for my creative life. Clock in at 9, clock out at 5. Or better yet, retreat from the world altogether into a monastery and come back out when the work is done. Actually, the second one is a little extreme. I actually like people and value interaction, and I very much enjoy having a family and social part of my life. But I wouldn't mind having a cave to go to 3 to 5 days a week where there were no distractions. That's just not how life works. And it's probably not the way your life works out either. As I said in the intro, even though I plan each week prior to the week beginning, I have yet to have a single week during the last 18 that has gone exactly to plan. The rigid, grumpy side of me bristles every time the plan goes awry. And yet, here I am, 18 weeks in, and I am 28,220 words ahead of pace. If I look at the last 13 years, since I made the decision to make my creative life a recognized and central part of my routine, rather than just something I did whenever I could find the time, I know that the only way for me to continue to realize my creative goals is to be flexible. In those 13 years, the basic structure of my day-to-day life has undergone 8 significant reorganizations. 9 if you count the worldwide pandemic response as one of those. By significant, I mean one of those big life changes that show up on the lists you might find online of major stress-inducing life events. I've not had a 2-year period in that time that did not include at least one major life change, and that's not including another half dozen or more events that caused me to completely realign my expectations and routines in a significant way. Throughout it all, though, I've managed to keep some level of creative life moving forward. Even during the COVID era when my writing production tanked, I still worked on several ongoing projects, including the publication of my novel. I've had to learn to pivot. Even though it almost always makes me grumpy when I have to take the schedule I've made and toss it aside, I still do it. That's why I find it so important to break big picture goals down into smaller tasks. One of the key ways to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat is to have a pool of smaller tasks waiting to be achieved. That way, when the day goes south, I have options. If I can still find any amount of time to work on the open loop items I've identified, I can rack up at least one small victory. The easiest way to illustrate this is with my fiction writing category. I know that my average per hour fiction writing rate is right at 1,000 words per hour. Sometimes I hit 1,200, other times it dips to 800. It's like a bell curve. I know this because periodically I measure it. I make it a data point. Not every time I write, but often enough that I know instinctively what an 800 word per hour writing session feels like, and I can guess pretty accurately when I'm writing at a faster pace. Since I have recently been attempting to reignite a consistent fiction writing life, I've scheduled 3 hours per week minimum for writing fiction. Typically, I like to work in 3-hour blocks of time, so I will set aside one day with a 3-hour section blocked out for writing fiction. And then when that day gets mangled and I only have 1 hour to write fiction, I do it anyway. That's what I do. And I find a place on another day to shift those other 2 hours. Of course, fiction writing isn't the only area that has been shifted. I'm constantly moving the pieces of my life around on the schedule board, like I'm playing some sort of deranged chess match against a ghost. But by having my big goals broken down into smaller, bite-sized targets, I can be a bit more nimble and rearrange things on the fly. And little by little, I can continue to chip away at the mountain of work before me. Novelist E.L. Doctorow said, "Writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way." I try to apply this concept to many different areas of life, not because I don't enjoy planning, but because I know that the best laid plans are almost always disrupted, at least a little. And more often than not, they are ravaged beyond recognition. The proverbial headlights of the car may only show me the next bend in the road or illuminate the next road sign, but if I keep moving forward, eventually I will get to my destination. This week's takeaway is a point I've made multiple times in these videos, but it's something I have to constantly remind myself of, so you get to hear it again with me. Here it is. There's no perfect week. There is no perfect scenario for getting everything done. Oh, I've had some weeks where everything is just right and things pretty much go to plan, but those weeks are few and far between. If I waited for the perfect week before I applied myself to my creative work, I'd have never finished my first short story, let alone written a handful of books. The first step to anything is getting started. Once started, I can adapt from there. Sometimes in this segment, I give you a highly specific assignment. This week's point to ponder is a little more broad. Consider this question. Is there anything in your life that you think has to be just so before you can pursue your creative big thing? Is there anything you've allowed to become a barrier when in fact you could actually work around it if you just applied yourself to finding another solution? This is the kind of thing that would make a great writing out loud topic or something to ponder in your journal. I know I use both of these tools quite often when I'm considering this question for myself. That's it for this week's update. The next episode will also be a 2-week update, and it will be the last episode of the year as I plan to take a hiatus for a couple weeks. And there are some really big things that happened in weeks 19 and 20, so I hope you'll join me back here at the Million Words Project. For now, if you find these videos helpful, informative, or somehow soothing to crying babies or yapping dogs, I would appreciate it if you like, subscribe, comment, or otherwise interact with my content. And if you'd like to connect with me, there's information about how to find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even my very own website. Plus, you could consider buying one of my books as a stocking stuffer for the reader in your life or for yourself. I promise not to tell anyone if you buy yourself a gift. Just search for me on Amazon or any of the online book retailers, Eric Sheridan Wyatt. Until next time, remember, your words matter. Make them count.